Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is October 2nd, 2024, and happy first anniversary to Book Banter magazine, our companion publication. We started last year in 2023 with our first magazine with feature author Mercedes Lackey. It was a dream come true for me. She is somebody that I've read since probably junior high. I have always loved her books. And now we are 1 year old and have changed so much in that time, going from magazines that were just a 34-page paper to now getting to around 74 pages. Things are growing and they're going to keep growing because we are just adding more and more content every issue. And now our next issue comes out at the end of November, a little bit early, because we want to have you ready for Black Friday shopping. It will be our December and our year-end book buying guide issue. We're going to have some great feature authors that are going to be on our podcast in December. And then the rest of the magazine is going to be a buying catalog that includes every author who has been on Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, your book talk podcast, for the entire season. So you are going to be more than ready to go do your holiday shopping or just, increase your own to be read list. Now be sure to stick around till the very end of the show today because after our interview with today's special guest, we have information about a contest that we're running through October to celebrate our first anniversary of Book Banter magazine. Plus, we have upcoming authors who we're going to be bringing to you throughout this Halloween season. But for today, I have a fantastic interview to bring you with an extremely talented author who not only co-writes books with his wife, but also has his own middle grade reader series that you are going to love. I actually have a copy of it that I'm going to be reviewing later, and I cannot wait to get into this because the story's premise sounds so fun. I'm really looking forward to this one. So let's not waste any more time on my blather. Let's bring out today's guest. Please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, Reef Tuma. And this is one of those shows that it comes in very handy for me that I always begin by just asking my guest to please tell our listeners who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Reef Tuma, and I write books for kids of all ages. Probably my best known books are the What the Dinosaurs Did series, which I co-author and co-illustrate with my wife, Susan Tuma. And we have been making those books for about 10 years now. But more recently, I have started writing books for middle grade readers, ages, from around 8 and up, with my series Frances and the Monster and the sequel Frances and the Werewolves of the Black Forest, which are kind of spooky, suspenseful, funny adventure books set in Europe right at the start of World War II.
I feel like I should be reading them here. I'm in the right area for those stories.
Absolutely. The second book in particular takes place mostly in the Black Forest in Germany, right on the border of France and Germany. So it's got definitely has some roots in kind of that small village Germany feel.
Well, and there's so many stories around the Black Forest. It's just like a great plot point for many stories like this.
Absolutely. And what a name. I mean, they couldn't have possibly come up with a more inspiring spooky forest name than the Black Forest.
Now, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. Do you know why I always start out my podcast by having the guest introduce themselves?
Why is that?
Because I'm not always sure how to pronounce somebody's name correctly. And by having them do it, then I know how to pronounce it for the rest of the show.
Yes, and my name is notoriously, for a 4-letter long name, I have heard more pronunciation attempts than I can even remember. So I actually put at the back of my books in the author bio, I always include a little pronunciation guide right at the end of my bio, just so that if anybody's curious, they can be saying it the right way in their head when they read it.
And I did look up on your website how to pronounce it before we started this, just in case I needed to say it first. I really wanted to get into this because it's so much fun to have you on here because I have been seeing your work for a long time because of our mutual friend Mel Lang, which by the way, I am waiting for her to hurry up and write a book about her three dogs so that I can bring her on the show too.
Oh, I'd read it. Absolutely.
And she is the reason why I found your Dinovember books. And oh my God, these things are so much fun. The things that you do in there are so imaginative. Can you please explain these books?
Yeah, they're a little bit unusual as far as picture books go. I think people are always a little bit surprised when they see the illustrations because they're really not the traditional picture book illustrations that we all know and love. My wife and I, Susan Tuma, we have been making those books now since the original, which was actually classified as an adult nonfiction book. It was a kind of a coffee table book with 80 different dinosaur photos. And the second edition was a picture book edition, and that's really the one that we wanted to make, and that's the one that took off. So we've been making those ever since. But all of the art is photography based. So the characters are actual plastic dinosaurs that belonged to Susan and her little brother when they were kids. So the great thing about these dinosaurs is that they are dinosaurs that everybody has at the bottom of a toy bin in their house. They are these ubiquitous molded plastic dinosaurs from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And they're everywhere. And so it's really fun to watch kids pick up the book and see their own toys as the main characters in the book. Mm-hmm. They can kind of point out, oh, I've got that one. I have that one, and they tell us the names that they've come up with for those dinosaurs. And it's a ton of fun. So they are photography based. They are about 7 to 9 inch tall plastic dinosaurs who come to life at night and cause all sorts of trouble.
Now, I'm going to guess you did not start out your career as a dinosaur wrangler.
Well, no. Interestingly, that is kind of how our publishing career got started. We stumbled into it really riding the tails of the dinosaurs. But no, originally, what I have been doing as my day job, I guess you could say, I work as a designer. So I lead a team of designers. We work on software applications, and I've been doing that for, I think, about 12, 13 years now.
So how did you transition from working on computers to making dinosaurs come to life?
Well, back in, it must have been 2012, we were in kind of a rough patch. My son was about 2 years old, and he had some health problems that were keeping him up at night. So Susan and I, we would take turns waking up and walking with him and helping him fall back to sleep. He'd wake up several times a night. I think we were probably up with him every hour and a half, 2 hours every single night for about 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe a little longer than that. We were zombies, and he is our third kid. So we already had 2 others that we were taking care of. And we were starting to get so tired and so exhausted that we weren't having any fun with the older kids anymore. And they were just kind of stuck at home with us while we were sprawled out on the couch trying to find some time to nap. Mm-hmm. And so one night we were looking for something to, just some way of giving the kids something to do in the mornings. And Susan spotted this box of plastic dinosaurs that were hers from when she was a kid. Her parents had just dropped off a bunch of stuff. They're getting ready to move. So the box of dinosaurs just kind of showed up one day. So she spotted them, and she just had a spark of inspiration, I guess. And she took them into the bathroom and set them up on the sink, gave them some toothbrushes. And, we didn't think too much more of it and went to bed. The next morning, our second daughter, who was, I think, around 3 at the time, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 4, she ran into our room at the crack of dawn, of course, making our plan backfire completely. But she jumps on the bed and she's like, "Mom and Dad, you got to come into the bathroom. The dinosaurs came to life in the middle of the night, and they're brushing their teeth." And so she drags us into the bathroom, and we see the dinosaurs, and we see her, and we look at what they're doing with the toothbrushes, and we think, you know what? That's exactly what they did. And they're probably going to do it again tonight, and maybe they'll do it again tomorrow night, and we'll just kind of see where this goes. And so that was the start of what we ended up calling Dinovember. which is the month when dinosaurs come to life and cause trouble in people's homes, now in over 50 countries. So it's something that our dinosaurs are not the only ones who are causing trouble anymore. So for the past number of years, in places as far away as from us, where we were in Kansas City at the time, Japan, Norway, Iceland, Australia, South Africa, we have reports of dinosaurs causing trouble in homes all over the world. And when we started posting photos of these, that's really when we realized that we were getting a lot of interest from publishers and agents and just people who really wanted to see this as a picture book. And that's how the What the Dinosaurs Did series was born.
So now I know you have What the Dinosaurs Did Last Night, A Very Messy Adventure, What the Dinosaurs Did at School, and you even have a Christmas book, What the Dinosaurs Did the Night Before Christmas.
That's right. And we are actually working on another book, a new one titled What the Dinosaurs Did on Halloween. So we are in the middle of production on that one. The manuscript is written and finished, and now we're taking pictures. So our front porch is currently very much decorated for Halloween and has been for about 3 or 4 weeks now. So our neighbors probably think we're nuts. We only moved into this house about a year ago. So, we don't even really know everybody yet. And now they're going to think that we're crazy Halloween nuts, which isn't entirely wrong. But in this case, we do have our reasons.
I think it would be a great way to get to meet your neighbors and just let them know what's going on. So now, how did you go from the dinosaurs to your Frances and the Monster?
Yeah, Frances and the Monster, it was an idea that I had been playing around with in my mind for a long time, since before the dinosaurs. I've always been very interested in stop motion films. Mm-hmm. The Nightmare Before Christmas, the Leica films like Coraline, mm-hmm. and Kubo and the Two Strings, movies like that. And so I had originally imagined this story about a little kid whose parents are scientists who travel all over the world and leave them alone for far too long, far too often. And they get frustrated and decide to take matters into their own hands and use the parents' equipment to create a monster that will both keep the kid company, but also help them to get back at the parents. And that was the original idea. And for the next few years, I was ruminating on it, and it just kind of kept fading out of my mind and popping back in at random times. And so at a certain point, I realized I really, really wanted to write this story. And it had changed a little bit, and Frances had started to take shape as a character and get a little bit more complex and human than the original idea. But I started working on it a few years later and spent about 6 years drafting it and revising it and fine-tuning it and finally querying agents and getting published with HarperCollins.
And I know that Frances and the Werewolves of the Black Forest actually is a Bram Stoker Award nominee. How did that make you feel whenever you got that?
Yeah, it's been very exciting because in writing these books, I really saw them as a blend of genres. And when I pitched them originally, the description was something like, equal parts humor, horror, and heart. And that was really how I felt about the books. But they're historical fiction, fantasy. They take place right at the start of World War II in Switzerland. So there's a lot of actual history happening in the background of these stories. There's a little bit of a science fiction element. They're very much adventure stories. But I really loved playing with the horror genre and finding ways to tell a story for kids that would be, just scary enough and just spooky enough and just suspenseful enough, because kids love that stuff and they don't get enough of it. Horror for kids is having a bit of a moment now where there's a lot of books. People are starting to realize how much kids enjoy these stories and how much they're looking for spooky, scary books. Mm-hmm. So to be recognized by the Horror Writers Association with the nomination and eventually becoming a finalist, it was a big validation for these stories and these books as horror books.
So now when you get an idea for a book, what is your process like? How do you go from concept to published work?
My process is all over the place most of the time. When you write books, and also have a full-time job and also have 4 kids, the opportunities to write or think about writing or come up with ideas and explore ideas, they're not always consistent, and they don't always happen at the same time or in the same place or in the same way. So I've really had to grow adaptable
Yeah.
and find ways to make the most of the time and the space that I do find for writing and creativity. So for me, it might be an idea that comes to me that maybe doesn't come fully formed, but there's something that is interesting or exciting or inspiring, much like the original idea that would become Frances and the Monster. And sometimes it'll take a few weeks, a few months, even a few years for that idea to really have the time to germinate and form into something that I can work with. Other times, there are ideas that come that I'm really excited about, that feel like, okay, I understand how this is a story. You know, this is not just an idea. This is a story. I can kind of sense the beginning, the middle, and the end, and I can sit down and start to outline or draft and explore different characters and settings that might make the story come to life. That's what I've been doing for the project I'm working on now, which doesn't have a title yet, but is a story that it was an idea. I wanted to tell a story about the ways that the spaces kids have to play and be free and experience childhood have kind of been shrinking. And we've kind of been chipping away at those spaces for a number of years and a generation or two. And so I wanted to explore that and just what it feels like to be a kid right now. So that was something that was kind of thematic, kind of conceptual, but quickly blossomed into a full-blown story. So that's, very little consistency in my process, as you can hear.
Well, I understand that you get some of these inspirations from your wife. What about from your children? Do they inspire some of your characters?
Oh, absolutely. I think with your own kids, and mine are 10, 13, 15, and 17. So they're all either recently in this middle grade age or they're there now. And so the things that they do, the things that they're interested in, the jokes that they crack, their personalities, it's impossible for that not to bleed into the characters that I'm writing. I don't consciously base characters on my children or people that I know. I think most writers don't. It's a question that authors get asked a lot. Are these like stories and situations that have actually happened? And I think for the most part, for most writers, the answer is no, not really. But at the same time, these little quirks and moments and facial expressions, all of it end up finding their way into the tool belt that a writer has for how they're going to actually make their stories come to life with the sentences and descriptions and paragraphs that they write.
And with the process that you've had to go through to create all of these books, what has been the easiest thing for you to deal with?
The easiest thing for me to deal with, I don't know that any part of writing is easy. I can definitely tell you the hardest thing to deal with, which is the dinosaur books take a ton of work and time and effort to make these photographs what they are. It's more like, we like to think of it as shooting a small independent movie more than it is illustrating a picture book. Props and set and scenery and location scouting. And for this Halloween book, we're going to need extras. So we're going to have actual children in costumes that we're going to have to wrangle and coordinate and get waivers from their parents and all that stuff. It's like shooting a small movie.
That'll be so cute, though.
Yeah, it's going to be fun for sure. But the easiest part, I think, for me, is the revision. I love getting to the point in a manuscript where I am thinking about every sentence and every word. I'm looking at what I've written and playing with each sentence and word choice to make it as musical and interesting and unique as I can. And once I get to that point in a manuscript, I am in my element. I am really having fun. So I think, some people love just sitting down and writing a first draft. For me, that is always a challenge. But once I get the ideas out there and some structure in place and I start moving things around, I love getting to the sentence level and really making those sentences sing as much as possible. That's just the part that I could do that forever and never stop if my editors didn't make me.
Now, I think this is a good point in the show that we should do our 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I have eternal hope that it will happen one day. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Question 1. Since you are a children's book author, what is your favorite book from childhood?
Oh, that's an easy one. My favorite book from childhood is Redwall, the original Redwall book by Brian Jakes. I always bring this one up when people ask about, why did you want to write books for middle grade and what authors inspired you? I got to meet Brian Jakes before he died.
No way.
In a book signing event at a bookstore in Lombard, Illinois, I think, if I'm remembering right. It was a long time ago. My friend's dad took a photo of us talking to him. So I have a grainy old photo that somebody scanned into a computer at some point and digitized. So I've got the book with his signature. I've got the picture of us meeting him. He was just the nicest, kindest, most generous author that I've ever met. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Question 2. Since you are a parent and you have 4 children, I'm sure there has to be a book at some point that you have gotten very, very, very tired of reading again and again and again. What is that book?
I'm trying to think. I've got a policy. I try never to read a book more than once unless I'm doing it because it's research somehow. I'm trying to analyze some aspect of it for my own sake. But my youngest daughter, she listens to audiobooks before bed a lot. And she has been listening to the Ramona Quimby series on repeat for maybe 6 years now. So while I'm not actually sitting there listening to it for long and I'm not reading it to her actively, I feel like I have heard more bits and pieces of the Ramona Quimby stories more times than any other book series on earth.
That's incredible, though, that she is that interested that she's kept it going for so long. That's amazing.
She loves them. Absolutely. Loves them.
Question 3. What is the craziest thing you have ever had the dinosaurs do?
Well, the second year we did Dinovember, my eldest daughter was about 5, I think, 5 or 6. And she was understandably starting to get a little bit skeptical about the dinosaurs and whether or not they were actually coming to life. And she started, in the morning she'd wake up and find the dinosaurs, and her younger sister and little brother would be thrilled and amazed. And she'd kind of be like looking at us like, Mom and Dad, I think this is you. So the next night, the dinosaurs got into the garage and found some bottles of spray paint and came back into the living room and graffitied a large portion of the living room wall, drawing crude versions of themselves in kind of a Banksy, if Banksy was, 3 sort of style.
Mm-hmm.
And she woke up the next morning and came into the living room and was like, okay, Mom and Dad would never do this. This has got to be the dinosaurs. So that was probably the craziest things that the dinosaurs have ever done.
Was there a big discussion about, do we really want to paint the living room wall?
In order to do Dinovember the way that we've done it, in order to do the What the Dinosaurs Did books, I think the most important thing that we had to do is turn off the part of our brain that said, should we really do this? I don't think that question is compatible with the way that we make those books. So in one scene in What the Dinosaurs Did Last Night, A Very Messy Adventure, in kind of the climactic mess, the dinosaurs have splattered mud all over the living room, the walls, the rug, the bookshelf, the couches. And we made a decision early on when we were making that. That was our first of the picture books, and we made the decision early on not to rely on digital tricks and Photoshop and compositing as much as possible. So everything that is in those books, whenever possible, was a practical effect or a real thing. So when it came time to do this shot with all the mud, it was like, the smart thing to do would have been to take a photo of the empty living room with the dinosaurs and then just Photoshop a bunch of mud onto the walls.
Mhm.
We, of course, did not do that. We went outside with the hose and created a mud pit in the backyard and then scooped it up in buckets and threw it at the walls. We got some secondhand furniture and rugs and things for a few bucks at the local Savers or whatever and destroyed them with mud. And afterwards, we got the shot. We were happy with it. And Susan was like, I need to leave the house. I'm so sorry. I need to leave. You're going to have to clean this one up. So you got to turn that part of the brain off. But after the photo is taken, it definitely has a way of turning itself back on. But
that's some amazing commitment to your process.
Yeah, I think for the sake of the kids, not that they would know the difference between, a photoshopped image versus something real. They're not necessarily going to be able to tell. You can do some pretty amazing things digitally, but it was just sort of a sense of integrity, artistic integrity, or really wanting to, if we're going to be presenting these messes to kids, they should be real messes. They should be actual messes that we make and then had to clean up. That just felt like the right way to do those books. So we're still doing it that way today.
I love that. Question 4. I know you've done some book signings out with the public. What is your favorite experience meeting a fan?
When Susan and I did a school visit in, I want to say Yorkville, Illinois, or York, Illinois, somewhere at maybe an hour and a half from where we live right now. And when we got there, the librarian and some of the teachers, they had done such an amazing job getting the kids amped up for the visit. They had been doing Dinovember for the week prior. I think this was off season for Dinovember, so they were doing it just for the visit.
Mm-hmm.
And so dinosaurs were climbing up into the drop ceiling and they were knocking over books and all sorts of fun stuff for the kids to find. And they had also been doing a book club with Frances and the Monster for a few weeks leading up to it. And these kids gave up their lunch hour to come into the library and read and talk about Frances and the Monster. So they've been doing this for a few weeks before the visit and had just finished the book when we got there. And so when it came time to meet the kids and sign their books and talk to them, they had so many amazing questions and insights about the book because they'd already read it. They were excited about it. They'd talked about it amongst themselves. They talked about it with their librarian and teachers. And so they just had so much to say about the characters, about Hobbs, and about asking about some of the historical events and tie-ins to World War II that are sprinkled throughout the story. And it was just such an amazing experience to hear these kids be so excited about this book and so knowledgeable about the characters and the situations and understanding the themes and these things because they'd talked about them and discussed them and thought about them. It was amazing. It was so rewarding, as the writer of that book, to be able to have those conversations with these kids. It was absolutely far and away the best experience I've had at a signing.
That would be just incredible. Question 5. I know that dinosaurs were something that had belonged to your wife from her childhood, but what was your favorite toy from childhood?
I grew up with a dad who collected toys. He worked for the Chicago Tribune for about 30-something years, and his desk was decorated with so many toys that it actually became, for many years, a tour stop on the Tribune Tower walking tour. So, it's a historical building in Chicago. It's very beautiful, very, unique and noteworthy,
Mm-hmm.
and in the skyline. And so they would do these tours and they would all stop at my dad's desk because he had over 300, maybe 350 toys on his desk at any time. And he would rotate them, so it was always a different batch. Most of those toys were probably mine. And I think that when I stopped playing with something, it would mysteriously disappear. And then, maybe like a few months later, kind of reappear in my closet. So I had a lot of toys that I loved. I loved Ninja Turtles action figures. And the Ninja Turtles actually show up. I had these giant Ninja Turtle figures that were maybe, 18 inches tall, something like that.
Well, yeah, I remember those.
They actually show up in the original What the Dinosaurs Did book. The dinosaurs, they take Michelangelo captive, tie him to a chair, and interrogate him about the whereabouts of the pizza, and then later you see them kind of in a brawl with all four turtles over a box of pizza. So they make their cameos in the books, but those were my absolute favorite toys.
Now, what about as an adult? What's your favorite toy now?
As an adult, I'll tell you what, there are these crossover action figures that they're selling right now that are Universal monsters crossed with Ninja Turtles. And it's like everything that I love all mashed up into a single toy. So they have a Leonardo Frankenstein, they have Raphael Werewolf, they've got Michelangelo as the Invisible Man. I mean, it's perfect. So I have been coveting those for close to a year now. Eventually I'll get myself a set, and I'll call it a business expense. We'll call it research or something,
I'm going to have to go find those. I am a huge Universal Studios monster fan. I have always loved the Universal Studio monsters, and that would be something amazing to add to my collection.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'll admit, my husband and I were both just like big kids. Our apartment looks like a toy store.
I love it. As a kid growing up, seeing my dad with all these toys, it just goes to show. And he was a professional illustrator and graphics artist at the Tribune. And so growing up, it was really cool to see an adult, one of the primary adults in my life, playing with toys and drawing pictures. Basically, this is what he did for a living. And it made it a lot easier to grow up and think, we could make a career of this. We could do this for fun, and we can do this as a way of actually building and supporting the family too. So it was easy to look back on that and think, yeah, this is something we could actually do.
That is fantastic. Now, please remind everybody who you are and where they can find your books.
Yeah, I am Reef Tuma. I write books for kids. You can find those books pretty much anywhere books are sold. You can find them at independent bookstores all across the country and on Amazon and places like that. But What the Dinosaurs Did on Halloween will be coming out in 2026, which feels so far away, but that is just how publishing works. It works very slowly. But What the Dinosaurs Did on Halloween will be coming out in 2026. Frances and the Werewolves of the Black Forest, my Bram Stoker nominated middle grade sequel to Frances and the Monster, that is on shelves at independent bookstores all over. You can also find out more information about me, my books, about Susan and Dinovember at reeftuma.com and dinovember.com.
And of course, you are the cover featured author for our October-November issue of Book Banter magazine. And people can find all of the information to find you and your books in that issue, as well as on our website and in the description of today's podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Now, I do have one question for you. Have you ever considered coming to the Frankfurt Buchmesse, the book fair here in Germany?
Oh, I would love to come to the Frankfurt Buchmesse in Germany. That would be incredible. I have never been to Germany, but I did a lot of research and looking into Germany and Switzerland and other countries in the region for the Frances books, trying to get the details right. And I thought I was going to be able to make a trip to Bern, Switzerland, and then take a tour through Germany and France. And COVID really messed up those plans. So I was not able to do that. But, it would be a dream come true to come to Frankfurt.
Yeah, we definitely have to make that happen for you.
I'm on board.
Thank you so much. And I have to thank Mel again for making this possible, because she's the one who connected me with you about your books.
Thanks, Mel.
This has been so much fun. I cannot wait to see what the dinosaurs do for Halloween.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great. I appreciate you inviting me on. And thank you to all of your listeners who love books so much. And I hope they check out the dinosaurs and they check out Frances the Monster.
So there you have it, folks. My interview with the incredible Reef Tuma. His books are absolutely fantastic. You really need to go check them out. And don't forget, he has got some wonderful spooky books in his Frances Stenzel series for Halloween. But he also has a wonderful Christmas book in the What the Dinosaurs Did series, which you have plenty of time to get in time for the holidays. Now don't forget, the Frankfurt Book Messe is getting ready to start here in Frankfurt, Germany. It runs from the 16th to the 20th, and my husband Pedro and I will be going to the event to cover it so that we can report back to all of you. You're going to be hearing about it on the podcast, and we will have special articles covering the event in our next December and year-end book buying guide issue coming to you at the end of November. And with any luck, if I can figure out my technology, we will be doing some very special live interviews at the Frankfurt Book Messe that we will broadcast for all of you during our season hiatus. And we'll also, of course, be interspersing that with some of our best of episodes from some of the best authors that we have had this season. Now, next week, we're going to be talking with edgy romance author Christy Wolf and why she chose to use 2 cover art variants for one romance novel. And after Christy, on October 16th, we have sci-fi author D.G. McCool Jr. And we're going to be talking to him about his sci-fi series and how he used his own personal experiences in the military and as a police officer to help fuel his creative ideas for his books. If you'd like to know more about these authors, be sure to go check out the current issue of Book Banter magazine, which you can find on our website, burkhartbooks.com. Links are in the description of today's podcast, so you can easily click and go. Now, if you like Book Banter magazine, how would you like to win a subscription for 1 full year starting in February of 2025? You can do that by going to Burkhart Books and signing up for our mailing list. Just by signing up, you are entered in our contest, but you can earn extra entries as well. All you have to do is find any of the posts that we do on our social media about Book Banter magazine or Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, this book talk podcast, and share them on your social media and tag us at Burkhart Books, so we will be sure to see it. Contest ends October 25th, and we will be announcing the winner on October 31st as our Halloween treat for you. And we promise no tricks. This subscription will come to you in PDF form and will be delivered via email. Well, I think that's enough for today, folks. We've got some chilly weather here in Germany. I think I'm going to go get myself a nice hot cup of tea and snuggle in with a good book for the evening, and I hope you get to do the same thing. So now you know what time it is, folks. It's time for you all to go forth and be happy.